Angeles Virgin Part 2.
The rumors spread far into the southwest of a haggard and evil owl woman who fed off babies. La Lechuza, they called me, or Little Owl.
Bruja de diablo, la maldita, mujer horrible, vete al infierno.
Yes, and I heard it on the wind, that even some of you listeners cursed at me and my fellow owls in the night when you saw our presence.
Sin vergüenza.
But alas, I sigh thinking about those old times. I also see that the cruelty came from a place of fear. I am neither of those horrible things people call me. I carry the weight of curses on my wings, yes, but never, ever have I once ever cursed you back. I carried them up and away from you. My family never stayed in one place very long. Instead, we roamed in migratory circles, following the animals, the water, and the weather as part of our culture. Everywhere our sandals touched was simply Tonan's back that held us up, or Mother Earth. Land was as free as the air we breathed, the water that fell from the heavens and the animals and plants that were food for us. Our culture was not one of consumerism, but proliferation. And yet, we had to adapt if we, shifters, were going to survive. Even if every cell in our bodies ached while doing so. The new names and identities helped my family roam safely, but the vampires ruined it, intentionally. After that fateful night, the burned reputation was a scorned vampire's last attempt to ruin my happiness. Humans never realized that they were actually being attacked by vampires, not a shifting owl. It was a trick they did using their blood that manipulated people's memories. I watched Teko's stoic gaze stare off into the distance. He was deep in thought. We didn't always read each other's mind using our mind link. We respected each other's privacy. I smiled softly at him as he turned to face me and nodded as if to say,
"Keep going."
There are evil shifters, yes, evil and murderous ones. I am not the only owl shifter, not the only Lechuza, merely one among many. Some of my kind strayed too far from the light, seeking solace in witchcraft when nothing else could mend the fractures of their lives. They peered too long into the abyss and forgot the true meaning of owl medicine. Perhaps I would have forgotten too, if fate had not bound me to the feathers of an owl for centuries. Even I began to gaze too deeply into that same darkness, until I realized how easily it devours the soul. Now, for this chapter, I crave only life. Imagine a circle. At one end, death waits patiently. Yet because the circle turns upon itself, birth is always near, its twin, its echo. Between these two moments exists a sacred threshold, a breath between endings and beginnings. That is where the owl spirit is born, alongside a few others, the bat, the spider, and the serpent. But this place is perilous. Lean too far into darkness, and you lose yourself to it. Lean too far into light, and you forget how to pierce the veil of night. True owl spirits walk the edge between both, seeing in the dark, yet never forgetting the dawn. Few shifters ever learn that balance. Perhaps that is why my mother fell so easily to the vampires. She was a Curandera, a healer of renown, a Tikkatal as they once called her. Before the old words faded from memory, the great horned owl was her totem, her essence, gifted in healing, protection, and the sacred art of bringing new life into this world. She could call babies back from the brink of death with her medicine, her prayers, her breath. She chased life with relentless devotion, and life rewarded her with grace. But she refused the lessons that death offered. She saw death as an enemy instead of what it truly is, a teacher, a keeper of balance. She fought against it, blind to the truth that death is not the end, but the other side of birth. And so, stripped of her silver, her sacred stones, and her protective amulets, she was left defenseless when the darkness came for her. I am not like my mother. In death, I found peace. In darkness, I found the Creator's reflection. I came to understand that life and death are an eclipse of His making, one shadowing the other, both necessary, both divine. He gives, and He takes away. That is His right, and I, the owl, am the witness to it all. At a very young age, my mother tried to teach me her craft. Once, she took me along to learn her trade.
"Turn the baby's shoulders this way,"
she murmured, her hand steady and sure.
"A woman's body is an instrument of the Creator. He shaped us so that the muscles of the birth canal press against the child's chest as he moves, squeezing out the last of the secret waters, helping the lungs to accept the Creator's breath of life."
I stood beside her, both horrified and mesmerized, gripping the hand of the sweating, screaming woman as she bore down. My heart raced with each cry. To me, it didn't seem quite as poetic as she put it.
"Give her a fresh bite stick,"
my mother said, nodding toward the table. I reached for the smooth willow branch wrapped in yarrow twine. The willow eased pain. The yarrow kept the blood from running too freely. Together they formed a small miracle of nature, medicine of comfort and healing. But as I passed it to the laboring woman, a cold feeling rose in my stomach. Something was wrong. Her pulse fluttered under my fingers. Her face had gone ashen. "Nan," I shouted in the old language she had forbidden, but she was focused on the newborn, a small bluish and silent bundle that had slipped into her arms. "Nan," I cried again, louder this time. She finally looked up, and in that moment her eyes widened.
"More yarrow,"
she barked.
"Get the poultice ready. Push on her stomach. Massage la matrice,"
she said, then reached down and gave her own breath, the silent and still infant. Her voice had shifted into that familiar rhythm of two tongues woven together, Spanish and the old healing tongue of her ancestors. I pressed both hands to the woman's abdomen as my mother had taught me. The muscle beneath my palms trembled, then grew firm, contracting under pressure. She passed the baby for the pale and panting mother to hold.
"Hold him with all your life,"
my mother whispered to the woman. My mother worked quickly, inserting her hands to remove fragments of the afterbirth. I turned my face away, the air thick with the scent of blood and sweat. In the background, the wail of a baby gave way, evaporating the cloud of fear that had formed. The pale woman cheered and a smile stapled to her face. My mother reached for her spoon-shaped tool, a long-handled curette, smooth and clean, having been saged after each birth, but worn from years of use, and carefully drew out the remnants that once clung to life within. The woman in labor began to moan again.
"Okay. Stop pushing,"
she said, her tone gentler now.
"Help her with the baby. Skin to skin. Let the child nurse."
I held up the tiny, still blue but alive infant to the mother's exposed chest. My mother's voice softened to a whisper.
"The baby's suckling will call the womb to remember its duty. The matrix must give up the afterbirth. Only then can both mother and child return to the living."
I nodded and did as I was told, but truth be told, I knew deep down that this type of work was not for me. In the end, both the baby and the woman were saved, but my mother could sense this from me too. Was she disappointed? She didn't make it obvious, but I sensed there was a little sting to the fact that I would not grow up to learn her trade. She never asked me to come along again, but I continued collecting herbs and creating the poultices and bite sticks as necessary for her. Plants. Herbal medicine. This is what interested me. Plants offered up their life to help us, just the way animals do. They were all equally sacred. I was an obedient child until I wasn't. Or perhaps I was simply more obedient to my internal call. I was 12 the day the lake changed me. The morning had been quiet, too quiet for summer. Even the crickets held their breath as I carried the clay jug down to the water. My parents were still asleep on their cots, and I wanted fresh, cold water.
Don't leave the house until the sun is at midday.
My parents always warned, but today I didn't listen. Mist floated across the lake's surface like pale ghosts, rippling when I knelt to fill it. That's when I saw him. A man stood between the reeds, eyes blue as the sky, but there was nothing serene about them. He whispered words from a language I could not name. His voice was thick, serpentine, curling into my chest before I understood its danger. When he stepped closer, I smelled the rot of whiskey, sweat, and urine. His shadow fell across mine and the world went cold. He reached for me. The jug fell and cracked on the rocks beside the lake. My heart hammered like thunder against my eardrums. He muttered something, a command perhaps, and in the next instant he forced me down into the mud. His hands were rough, tearing at my new dress. I screamed until my voice split open, until the sky itself seemed to tremble. And then, something inside me woke. From my fingertips erupted talons, black and glistening, each one humming with heat and fury. I didn't think, I struck. He gasped as I tore through him, attempting to push his exposure away from me. The sound was guttural, almost inhuman. I did not let him go. I refused. In fact, my grip became stronger. His blood came fast, dark, steaming, soaking the hem of my dress. I remember the smell, iron and alcohol, the way his eyes went wide as if seeing something divine in the horror of my face. He fell, his body convulsed, and then silence, a stillness so thick it felt alive. That's when I heard it, the shriek of the barn owl, high-pitched, commanding and ancient. It echoed through the trees, and suddenly the sky darkened with wings. Dozens of owls descended, spiraling in a frenzy above me. Their feathers brushed my hair, my arms, my bloodied hands. I screamed again, thinking they had come to punish me. But one by one they fell. Their bodies thudded against the earth, soft, broken things. Some hit my arms, limp in death. Others dropped like stones into the mud. The air was filled with the sound of shrieks, then nothing. Silence again. I looked around, trembling, unable to breathe. A pile of lifeless owls surrounded me, their glassy eyes reflecting my own horror. Then I heard it, a voice not of this world.
Take our sacrifice. We give our life for you, sister.
The words were not spoken aloud, but breathed into my soul. My tears burned as they fell. I gathered their bodies in my arms and in the skirt of my dress. I must get to my mother, I said to myself. She could heal them. She would know what to do. Soft feathers, still warm from flight, clung to me as I cradled them while I ran. The lake vanished behind me, the trees bending in grief as I fled through the valley. 8 miles I ran barefoot, my dress heavy with blood and feathers. I never once stopped to rest, nor looked back. Something greater than pain carried me home, something ancient and alive, pulsing through the veins of the dead owls and into me. It was the day that innocence died, and yet, like a circle, life came back, and something else was born.
Thank you for listening. If you like these kind of deep, psychological and horror thrillers, please subscribe.